call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. For Dr. Kish, our former superintendent who passed away recently.
Mrs. Vance Clemens?
Here.
Mrs. Cullen?
Here.
Mrs. Dolan? Ms. Kildare?
Here.
Mr. Kraus?
Here.
Mr. Rice? Ms. Thompson?
Here.
Mrs. Walters?
Here.
Dr. Yarnell?
Here. Madam President, before we get to questions and comments from the guests, I would ask the board to consider amend the agenda to add under the personnel portion of the agenda a motion to approve a resolution regarding employee number 8841 and employee number 7800.
Yes, thank you. I'll make that motion. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mrs. Cullen. Questions or comments from board members? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 8-0, so we will amend the agenda to include that item. Thank you. Okay, public comment? Penridge School Board welcomes public comment. According to Policy 903, we remind everyone of the following. Public comment shall be limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise specified by the board. Participants must be recognized by the presiding officer and note their name and municipality. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer rather than to individual board members, district employees, or members of the public. A speaker may speak once during each comment period. Please note that these sessions are designated for comments. To protect the confidentiality and privacy rights of all members of our community, the board encourages members of the public to direct any comments regarding particular individuals, such as students or district employees, privately to the superintendent or other appropriate administrators or board members, or to communicate with the board and superintendent privately by sending an email to psdschoolboard@penridge.org. Questions raised and not addressed may be followed up at a later time. I just want to remind you that when speaking about individuals, whether you use their name or not, that still counts. Thank you. The first on the list, Lindsay Herrera, Sellersville.
Forgive me, I haven't done this, so you're going to go here.
Sorry. Come on up to the podium, and then there's a little, it looks like a face speaking, and if you just push that button, it'll light up. That one?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Lindsay Herrera, and I live in Sellersville Borough.
Can you speak up a little bit, please?
Sure. Lindsay Herrera, and I live in Sellersville Borough. You have to pardon the uniform. I work third shift, so I'm actually going to work after I leave here. My concern that I would like to find out some more information on is in regards to the sister schooling program that we have currently going on. I would like to know what our short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals are to rectify the situation. I personally believe that it's not productive for children to be separated within their households, going to different schools. well as emotional issues. And I would like to know how that plans on being addressed on a more permanent basis, because sister schooling can't go on forever. But it's been a few years, so that's really why I'm here tonight.
Okay, thank you. Answer the questions and comments at the end of the comment period, just so you know. Any other questions or comments? That was the only one I had signed up. No? Okay. Thank you for sharing your comments. I think we're going to be looking at that, and I asked Dr. Bolton if he has your contact information so we can follow up with you regarding the answers to your questions. So, is there anything you wanted to add?
Sir, you know, we've had a conversation. I'll have someone follow up again to answer some more of your questions. Okay?
Thank you. Okay, the first up is the consent calendar. Is there anything that board members want voted on separately? Okay. Then I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar, items A through H. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Dr. Yarnell. Questions or comments from board members?
I think it might be, is it not I? There's two after G, so I'm not sure. I just want, before we go. at least-
Oh, they're
Oh,
both
I'm sorry.
combined under H, that's why.
I beg your pardon, sorry.
No, that's okay. Any other questions or comments from board members? All those in favor? Motion passes 8-0. Okay, student liaison report.
Hello, I'm Georgia Dolan, corresponding secretary of student council. I'm very excited to be here tonight. Right now, the only update that we have is we had one meeting so far this year, and we voted on and approved our homecoming theme to be the Wizard of Oz. That is the only update I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the president's report. I have 2 items this evening. One is an update on negotiations. Both parties have been working together to develop an agreement that is fair for everyone. We believe we are in the end stages of getting that accomplished. And the second item I have for you is the 6-year capital projects plan. In an effort to develop long-term financial planning to keep the district on solid fiscal footing for the foreseeable future, the board asked the administration to develop a 6-year plan for capital projects, comparing the needs of the district with the funds available to meet those needs. In 6 years, our debt payments will drop by $6 million on an annual basis, followed by other significant drops over the next several years. If we plan responsibly and do not borrow money, we have the ability to save and fund major expenses as we go without borrowing money or raising taxes. With the incredible record keeping of our maintenance department, they were able to give us a strong sense of the upcoming maintenance needs of the district, so we could balance the $8 million we had in our capital fund with the needs over the next 6 years. Together, we were able to prioritize the needs of the district along the 6-year timeline while addressing more cosmetic concerns after the drop. This gives the board, in concert with the administration, the ability to plan for that drop and prioritize the major projects and expenses going forward. Within the 6-year plan, we were even able to budget for air conditioning 3 large spaces at all elementary schools in the next year, so classes can rotate through those areas on hot days and minimize the amount of time students are working in excessive heat for an estimated cost of $1 million. The cost of air conditioning all 7 schools is estimated to cost close to $13 million and would take several years, so we wouldn't be able to condition all of the schools at once. This was a creative solution suggested by Dr. Bolton to get air conditioning into all buildings at one time and within the budget. Addressing the drainage issues and field leveling issues for our grass fields across the district was also something we were able to include in the budget. We would like as many students as possible to have the opportunity to participate in extracurricular activities. Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. Bates-Clemens. This is my first superintendent's report, so I have more than 2 items. I promise after a few years, maybe I'll get it down to 2. So it's been a wonderful first 3 weeks. I've spent a lot of time learning the community and meeting as many people as possible. I just want to say thank you to the board, to the administration, and to the parents, and especially the students who have introduced themselves as I've been around the community and welcomed me to the Penn Ridge community. I'm thrilled and honored to serve as your superintendent. Tomorrow, we welcome 22 brand new teachers into the Penn Ridge family. They spend 3 days this week beginning their induction work. Next week, 715 teachers and staff are back for their 3 days of in-service and getting the classrooms ready for our 7,052 students who return on September 4th. It's a busy and exciting time in the district. I have 4 exciting student items to share. The first is I'm pleased to report that we had 2 seniors from the class of 2018 who recently have been notified that they achieved National AP Scholar status this year. Emily O'Brien and Michael Reed. Is Emily here with us this
No,
evening?
she did not make it tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Ferry. To be named a National AP Scholar, a student must receive an average score of at least 4 on every AP exam they take and must score 4 or higher on at least 8 exams. Emily scored an average of 4.5 and took 8 exams in May. She will be attending the University of Rochester in the fall. Our other National AP Scholar, Michael Reed, scored an average of 4.33 on his 9 exams, and he will be attending the University of Maryland in the fall. Even though they're not here tonight, can we take a moment to recognize them for their achievement? Beyond that, we had 355 students who took a total of 645 AP exams in 21 different subjects. The average score at Penn Ridge was 3.49. A total of 113 Penn Ridge students were recognized by the College Board for their performance in some level. 48 earned AP Scholar status. 27 were awarded AP Scholar with honor status. 36 students were awarded AP Scholar with distinction status, and Emily and Michael earned National AP Scholar status. The difference in the levels has to do with how many exams you take, as well as the scores you must receive on them, as well as your average on all the scores that you took. We do have the full list of all 113 of those students on our website, so I would encourage, if you have not, to check that out. I was having freeze pops with the cheerleaders on Wednesday, which is not something I thought I'd ever say in my life, and they had just returned from camp. So they had been away at camp for, I don't know if it was 4 or 5 days, and they still had plenty of energy. I learned at that camp that they had won a lot of team and individual awards, and I want to recognize them. They earned superior ribbons for individual JV and varsity evaluations in rally routine, cheer, and game day band dance. They received Most Improved Program trophy for the entire team. They estimated that there were more than 50 programs that were there, so quite a feat to earn the Most Improved. Seniors Jordan Ruth and Natalie Talone, and juniors Gabby Sharp and Madison Diamante were named All-American winners in the varsity division and received an invitation to London, England for a tour and to participate in their New Year's parade. Tierney Morrison won the jump off, which I think is a good thing. In the JV division, it was also named an All-American. She received an invitation to participate in the Thanksgiving Day parade in Philadelphia. Because both teams were trophy winners, they were eligible to cheer pregame at the Citrus Bowl. I do not believe they'll be able to join, but just an honor that they were able to do that. For those of you who have been at board meetings recently, you know that one of our students, Dylan Miller, has recently won a silver medal in the Skills USA National Competition. He was recognized last week at the Upper Bucks County Technical School. We just wanted to let you know that he did win a brand new 2018 Harley-Davidson motorcycle. Mr. Kraus, you'll be very happy, valued at $22,000. It was at the school, and I know there were lots of adults who were anxious to take it for a spin. The bike will be put to good use. It's going to be a learning tool there at the school for the students to be able to interact with. Finally, I know that the board approves lots of student trips, but I wanted to give you an update on a special one just so that you understand the impact that it has on our students as well as others. I'd like to share some details about the summer's trip to Nuremberg, Germany, that 17 of our students and teachers, Leanna Goodrich and Michael Garrison, just returned from. The group spent 3.5 weeks studying at Peter Vischer Schule and staying with their host brothers and sisters. They were the same individuals, the students who were here in Penridge in the fall. So that's a really neat exchange program. Our students attended classes taught by Goodrich and Garrison and the faculty there at PBS and made day trips to Munich, Reichenberg, Dresden, and Wurzburg. They studied World War II history, very appropriate, as well as visits to a museum that was located on a former Nazi rally grounds, and had a day trip to the Flossenburg concentration camp. All of those students are going to be enrolled in German 4 or 5 in the fall, and obviously will be a wonderful resource for their classmates as they talk about the experiences that they had on that trip. As we recognized earlier, I also wanted to mention the passing of Dr. Robert Kish, who served as the superintendent of Penridge from 1995 through 2013. Dr. Kish served the district during a time of great growth, and as I've spoken to people who knew him, was well respected for both his integrity and his complete commitment to the students of this community. Prior to coming to Penridge, Dr. Kish served our country as a captain in the Army, and also served as a superintendent in Livingston, New Jersey for many years. Outside of his work, Bob was very active showing both horses and German shepherds. He was married to his wife, Mary Ellen, for 56 years. Not that 46 isn't impressive as well. He's married to his Mary Ellen for 56 years. I was able to speak to her on a couple occasions and express our condolences and our gratitude of the entire Penridge community. I know that Dr. Yarnell served alongside Dr. Kish for many of those years, and so I've asked him to say a few words of remembrance. Dr. Yarnell?
Thank you. And actually, I served with Dr. Kish for the entire 18 years that he was here. He was the superintendent of Penridge for an exact 18 years, from November 1 of 1995 until October 31st of 2013. Dr. Kish was born and raised in Perth Amboy. For those of you who know New Jersey geography, it's a suburb, industrial city outside of New York City. He attended Rutgers for all 3 of his degrees. He got a bachelor's degree in English and social studies and a master's degree in guidance and counseling, and then of course his doctorate in educational leadership. As you mentioned, he was captain in the Army, but what he didn't tell people, unless he was almost forced into a corner, was that he served during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he was in Florida prepared to go to Cuba. So, not a good time. I remember it well. It was certainly a very scary time. And he never brought it up. It was one of those things that he kept in his pocket, so to speak. From an educational experience, he served as an English teacher initially, and then as the principal at Hunterton High School, and then for 16 years, 4 at West Morris as superintendent, and 12 at Livingston, before he came to Penridge. He was hired on a split vote. Unlike you, Dr. Bolton, he came with a 6-3 vote, took a chance on us, and stayed for quite a while. At Livingston, he had test scores that everyone dreams of. For those of you who don't know where the Livingston School District is, its perhaps most prominent feature was the Bell Labs. At that time, definitely considered the premier scientific and engineering laboratories in the world, not just in the country. And so, of course, he had a lot of very demanding scientists and engineers in his, and I know about that subject very well, in his district, but they also came with the expectation for strong education, and the test scores at Livingston ran in the high 600s on average. So he came here with the intent, at least spoken, that he would like a new challenge and try to do good things for the district. I think he proved that that was true. When he arrived, it was a time of crisis, or at least post-crisis. We had had 3 school teacher strikes, the only 3 in the history of Penridge, in a period of 6 years, and 2 in the prior 3 years, and the district had run deficits for 2 consecutive years, which obviously neither the district nor the state liked very much. I think Dr. Kitsch's philosophy was that children's education was first and foremost always, and he advocated for all children, not just the superstars that you've mentioned tonight with the high AP scores, but for the special needs students, the ESL students. At that time we had fewer than we have today, but we had quite a large number of those students. The three board members who did not choose to support him when he was made Pennridge superintendent basically objected to his salary. Just for reference, that salary was $95,000 in 1995. Beyond that, I think Dr. Kish personally interviewed all the administrators and all the teachers that came to the district, and I think on the whole, like anyone, I'm sure he didn't find all of them to be what he had hoped for, but I think many of them have. I think that's contributed greatly to the increasing quality of the district's educational program. Obviously teachers and administrators too to some degree, but teachers often are here for 30 or 35 years. So the people that you hired in the late 90s will be here for some time still, for the most part. One of the things that he did, which I think was fiscally absolutely incredible for the district, was that he recommended, and the board adopted, the idea of self-insurance for the district health care plan. Something that was pretty novel at the time, certainly for school districts, and something that I think has paid big benefits for us. And if you think that's wrong, simply look at things like the IU's consortium, which has really struggled, and the Bucks County Vocational School is a classic example of the difficulties that that has caused for some of the schools that have entered into that situation. So it certainly was something that was worth doing. He implemented a maintenance and renovation program. As mentioned with Mrs. Venus-Clemens talking about borrowing money, the Capital Projects Fund, which we contributed money to for every year since, I believe it was 2007, allowed us to renovate and or increase the maintenance on all 7 elementary schools and the 3 middle schools, perhaps not Penn Central because it was actually built and opened during his tenure. And of course the high school was both renovated and added to that time. The high school was no mean situation to go through because for those of you who are old enough, you can remember the lower building that sat over here in the parking, what now is the parking lot. There was a lot of sentimentality maybe is the right word, about keeping the lower building, even though it was in very difficult shape. Dr. Kish invited people in, took them on tours, got to visit the rat den in the basement. It was a very interesting thing. But I think it showed the community that there really was an enormous amount of work that would have had to have been done to maintain or to continue operating that building. He was the, if you will, the person who thought and proposed the turf field that's up here on the campus that's now the stadium. Obviously another wonderfully controversial issue. He had a turf field in Livingston. Livingston was a wealthy district, so that wasn't very surprising. But I think especially this particular summer, we can all appreciate what the turf field offers. You know, if this were a grass field, it would be, like Papa Yoder was, pure mud by the fall and continue as deep mud by Thanksgiving. So it was something, and obviously the turf field is used almost continuously in evening throughout most of the school year, and can even be used in winter, unlike our grass fields, which are pretty tough to work on. I think he was certainly someone who was interested in curriculum. He hired Dr. Zielinski, who was kind of his right-hand man, or right-hand woman, I guess, properly spoken, at Livingston as the director of curriculum. She implemented his ideas, but when he saw a problem, and a classic one was the situation where not all of our third graders were actually able to read on grade level at that point, and that's when Reading Street was introduced. It was a big project, cost a lot of money, and not everyone was in favor of it. And obviously, it too has some issues, but I think it has proven valuable that we've gotten more of our students to reach that goal, which is very important, as I understand it from the educational literature, that students be able to read at grade level in 3rd grade. So all in all, I think he made major improvements for the district. I was fortunate enough to act as board president for half of his term, 9 years out of the 18. Certainly, he was a wonderful colleague to work with. At the time, I was working in Delaware, so I was a long-distance commuter. And it was a pleasure. I knew when Bob called, it was something important, and if it wasn't something important, I wouldn't get the call, and it wouldn't create a problem for my work time. And I have continued to see Dr. Kish at dinners and lunches. It's been a pleasure. Unfortunately, his health has not been the best. He, until very recently, maintained his extreme, maybe that's the wrong word, but maybe it's the right word. He, and particularly Mary Ellen, his wife, have a great, or had a great interest in the dogs, the German Shepherds that they raised. He judged. He had a dog that won best in class, and I think they're herders, but don't quote me on that because I'm not a dog person per se, but at the Westminster Kennel Club. So they were very accomplished, had a wide circle of friends, traveled after he left the district to Sutton, Massachusetts to train dogs on a farm in Massachusetts every weekend during the nice weather, the spring, summer, and fall months. So they were very active, and frankly, I will miss them.
Thank you, Dr. Rita. The other portion of the superintendent's report is for me to be able to publicly recognize 2 generous donations from our community. The first is a donation of $250 and 150 Frisbees from the Penridge Chamber of Commerce. The second donation is an anonymous donation of approximately 45,000 pieces of K'NEX that will benefit the STEM classroom in Central Middle School. We appreciate those donations and the impact that they will have on our classrooms for many students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bolton, and thank you, Dr. Yarnell. I can say after having gone to school in the old Penridge High School, when I talk about it with my kids and how you had to go from the lower to the upper and you had to go outside, whether it was snowing, raining, and if you were a freshman and you had to go from the freshman center to the lower, the upper, you tell the kids that now, my kids are like, oh my gosh, that's child abuse. Okay, committee reports. Activities, Mrs. Cullen?
Thank you. I just have one motion. It's a motion to approve the 2017-18 district school year with a minimum of 900 hours of instruction at the elementary level and 990 hours of instruction at the secondary level in lieu of 180 days.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second
Okay, moved by Mrs. Cullen, seconded by Mr. Kraus. Questions or comments from board members?
I was just going, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Dr. Price was going to offer kind of an explanation.
Sure.
That was.
Thank you, Mrs. Cullen. So the reason this is on here tonight, and this is a little bit after the fact, because once the state approves an emergency declaration for weather, then they ask that this is supported in minutes at a